quick walk around on the 3000 GT.
2,000 horsepower.
Not quite, my friend, not quite.
300 GT. Oh, 3,000 I mean. I gotta show me. Hey, get in the front. Wow, Jesus.
So yeah, I think it's a really nice looking car, guys. I think the back is probably my favorite.
Back is
You got the 90 style rims. But yeah, the quad exhaust, as you can see, the guys seem to enjoy as well. But yeah, I think it's a nice looking car. Hey guys, so I am inside of my 1997 Mitsubishi 3000 GT 6-speed. It's the SL trim, which was slotted. It's the mid-level trim right above the base and right below the VR4. Now, a lot of you may be thinking or wondering why I didn't go for the VR4, which was the top level trim, had the most power. I think it had like 300 horsepower. At the time, it had a lot of cutting edge technology, which other cars at that time didn't have. The main reason I didn't go for the VR4 is I did a lot of research before getting this 3000 GT, and a lot of that technology that the VR4 had, although it was great at the time, it didn't tend to work, or it tended to break down quite frequently. So a lot of, at least from what I've researched, what I've heard, a lot of VR4 users either have to constantly spend money on repairing things on their car, or because obviously it's been discontinued and out of production for a long time, you can't find parts anymore. So a lot of those features, they don't work anymore, so they're kind of just whatever, like not working on the car. So, and just other issues I heard about the engine as well. The VR4 tended to have I guess more issues, long-term maintenance issues as well. So I went for the SL trim, which again is the kind of the mid-level trim above the base, right below the VR4. The SL, I believe, has 220 horsepower. The base, I believe, had 180. Aesthetically, you can't really tell the difference between any of the trims, except I believe in 1999, which was the final model year, the VR4s had that huge, slightly obnoxious wing in the back, which is what distinguished them from the other 3000 GT trims or models. But I think that was the only year where the the VR4 had a different wing or a different anything. My year, 1997 all the way through again up to 1999, I'm pretty sure all the trims look exactly the same, had the same aesthetics. So there's nothing different on the VR4 that sets it apart. And of course there's a badge. There's a VR4 badging on the back too, which would say or let people know kind of what trim you had. The 3000 GT, as the title of my video says, I think it's aggressively kind of poo-pooed on and overlooked and underappreciated. I think for a number of reasons. That's why I kind of called it playfully the Fredo Corleone of the JDM era, of JDM brethren. I was actually going to call it the Jermaine Jackson of JDM cars, but a lot of you guys may not be old enough or may not be aware of who Jermaine Jackson is. He's Michael Jackson's older brother, long story short. And according to a lot of people, Jermaine Jackson actually had the best voice, or I guess the most soulful voice is what people say. But because Michael was so talented as well and very charismatic, and you know, all those different things that made him such a great artist. He obviously got all the publicity, the fame, and the attention, and Jermaine kind of just is overlooked and remains kind of a what do you call it? A small little reference, mention in the kind of the great anthology of you know, the Jackson Brothers, the Jackson 5, etc., etc. Fredo, as I'm sure you Godfather fans know, is, you know, was thought as to be, you know, completely useless by the Godfather, overlooked, you know, stepped over in terms of Michael Corleone taking over the crime family when Vito Corleone died. And I guess that kind of really is more, or I guess the most relevant aspect of what I think, how the 3000 GT is kind of viewed. This car gets, like I said, gets a lot of not hate really, but it doesn't get a lot of love because it's constantly compared to mainly, I think, the Supra, but even the 300ZX, the RX-7 as well. There is also the SVX, which, you know, I have all of those cars, but I think when you're really talking about the main four that people mention, it's usually the 3000 GT, the 300ZX, the RX-7, and the Supra. And of those four, I think the 3000 GT ranks the lowest in most people's eyes. Personally, I can see why in some instances and not so much in others. Like, so for example, like aesthetically, right, how they look. I think the 3000 GT is actually a really nice looking car. It has that 90s JDM, you know, very clean, smooth, sexy lines, you know, that kind of look and vibe to it. Very similar to, you know, the RX-7 and the Supra. Now, personally, I prefer the look of the RX-7 and the Supra, but I think the 3000 GT looks really good. You know, the quad exhaust tips in the back. Again, I'll do a exterior shot as well, guys. But it's aged, I think, more than other JDMs. You know, I forgot the NSX. The NSX obviously would be considered one of that core of JDM cars in the 90s as well. I definitely think it's aged not as well as, say, the NSX or the Supra or the RX-7, but I don't think you look at the car, you're like, oh my God, it's so ghastly or awkward or, you know, whatever, like just ugly POS. I think it's a nice looking car. I get a lot of compliments on the car, a lot of thumbs up. Mainly, I get compliments from people who kind of don't even know what it is, or they'll come up and say, hey man, I don't see any of those on the road, or that, you know, that's one of the best, you know, 3000 GTs I've seen in that kind of condition. So again, from an aesthetic standpoint, I think they're a really nice looking car. From a, you know, performance standpoint, again, I have the SL trim. The VR4 is the most powerful at 300 horsepower. But the thing that really, the big knock on these cars, and has always been the biggest knock, is the weight. They're very heavy. I think they were the heaviest of all of those cars I just listed, and I think by a fairly significant margin. Now, I guess it kind of really is what you're looking for, right? Now, this car really is more of a cruiser. It's not really a sports car, if that kind of makes sense. It looks like a sports car from the outside, but it doesn't drive like a sports car. Now, I mean, again, I don't have the VR4. I have the SL, so that could make a difference as well. But from what I've heard, the weight of the car really kind of took away any nimbleness or agility that it had. It just kind of felt like bloated and overweight and, you know, cumbersome. And it's also, another thing to mention, guys, is, and this is kind of more, you know, technical stuff, which, again, my channel kind of stays away from, but, you know, all of the 3000 GTs, except for the VR4, were front-wheel drive. And a lot of people don't like front-wheel drive. They don't like the way it feels. They don't really like the way it handles. I personally, honestly, guys, I don't care. I don't really feel a big difference either way. In terms of the weight, it's never been something where I'm like, oh my god, it's so cumbersome, or I hate driving it. It's just so heavy. It's a cruising car. It's very similar to my SVX in that regard, guys. It's not a sports car. It's not something you're gonna be racing someone from light to light. It's not a car that you're gonna really have any fun tracking. It's just a car that you kind of putt around town in, run errands. It has a semi-decent back seat, which is not, very usable at all, but far more usable than the Supra. Not as usable as the 300ZX, but again, not as usable as the SVX, but at least it's there, and it's more usable than some of its other brethren. So in terms of the weight and the additional weight and how heavy the car felt, I think that's another reason why it kind of gets overlooked or poo-pooed on. One other thing I think that kind of contributes to the car being overlooked and kind of getting a bad reputation is, again, well, at least for the VR4s, because they had a lot of that cutting edge technology for its day, that stuff just tended to not work or break down. So again, I've heard a lot of VR4 owners either constantly work on repairing their cars, or just that tech doesn't work. So basically they're driving around an SL with a little bit more horsepower. These cars I've heard are very difficult to work because the engine bay is very, very small. It's really hard to get in there and kind of tool around. So you don't see a lot of these that are modded in any way, which I guess for a lot of people who are into the JDM scene, they're all about adding horsepower and supercharging and turbocharging and all that stuff. But apparently, with the 3000 GT, it was very difficult the way the engine is laid out, and everything's very compact. I think the badging, the fact that it is a Mitsubishi, that's another reason why a lot of people kind of poo-poo on the car. Mitsubishi doesn't really make cars anymore. I mean, they make, I think, like crossovers and mid-size SUVs now, but I actually don't even think they make cars anymore. They don't make they certainly don't make sports cars, but they don't even make like coupes or sedans anymore, which is kind of a shame. For a while, Mitsubishi was, when they had the 3000 GT, they had it's escaping my mind right now, but they had another sports coupe, which came out in the early 2000s. They had a Spider version of it. I know as soon as I stop this video, I'm going to remember it, but, it came out right around the time that Toyota had the Celica, when they brought back the Celica GT. It was a nice looking car. My brother had one of those cars for a while, and I thought it was a nice looking car. But now, Mitsubishi doesn't make cars anymore. They certainly don't make sports cars. So in a way, actually, I think that people are like, yeah, it's a dead brand, it's a dying brand. Their cars are probably crap, and I think that's another reason why the 3000 GT kind of gets pooped on or forgotten. But from a personal standpoint, owning the car, haven't had any haven't had any issues with it. Reliability has been fantastic. Again, I have the SL trim. Ironically enough, of all my JDMs, it's been one of the most reliable cars from that standpoint. Haven't had any issues, any lights come on. Now, granted, when I got this car, again, it's a 97. I got this car with like 7,000 miles on it, so it literally had not been driven. So, but then again, that could be a good or a bad thing, if the car's sitting for a while and it's that old, cars are meant to be driven, they need to be driven. So that's, that was my concern, the fact that it hasn't been driven and what issues that might, create. But, so far, knock on wood, I haven't had any issues with the car whatsoever. It's been super reliable. And in a lot of ways, I kind of view this car as kind of my daily driver. I don't really have a daily driver because I do have several cars I can choose from, and I try to, just to kind of change things up, try to pick a different one to take out for various reasons, to go to work, take the kids to practice, run errands, etc., etc. But if I had to kind of classify one of my cars as a daily driver, ironically, I think it would be this 3000 GT, because it is very easy to drive. I actually enjoy the shifter. Again, I have a 6-speed. It also came in a I think it was a 4-speed automatic. I'm not sure, maybe a 5-speed. But apparently the automatics had a lot of problems. Those tended to break down as well. So I got the 6-speed. and the shifter feels great. I've actually never driven a Porsche stick shift manual, but from what I've heard, from videos I've seen, from talking with friends, and I know this may sound blasphemous and sacrilegious, so you know, you guys correct me or blow me up in the comments if I'm wrong, but the shifter actually feels very Porsche-y. It's not buttery smooth like my 1M, or even, you know, kind of precise and as precise as, let's say, my NSX, or obviously doesn't have that gated feel of my R8, but you know, it actually feels really good. It's not overly rubbery or notchy. Again, it's not as precise and smooth as those ones that I just listed, but the shifter feels really good. The clutch is easy to use, and it's a very enjoyable car to drive, to shift. And again, haven't had any problems, haven't had any reliability issues. The car looks good. Get a lot of thumbs up, get a lot of compliments about it, and you know, it's a car that I think if the Supra didn't exist, the RX-7 didn't exist, I think it would get a lot more love. These cars are super affordable, guys. From a standpoint, I had a video the other day about my Supra being overpriced and slightly overrated. These cars, depending on the mileage, depending on the year, depending on the condition, you know, you can get them for pretty easily 40, 50, 60,000, you know, all day. And, you know, even more on the low end on that. And it's just, you know, it's not a crappy car. It's a nice car, guys. It's one of those things where, again, I think it gets overlooked and hated on because some of its other JDM brethren just got a lot more love, a lot more hype. Some, you know, justified, some I don't think justified. You know, again, I think the weight of the car is really what kind of killed it in a lot of people's eyes, and when they compared it to the Supra and the RX-7 and how those drove and how light they were, or, you know, they were maybe the RX-7 in particular was more of a true sports car, probably even the 300ZX. I think that's why this car kind of plays second fiddle, is really treated as kind of the Fredo Corleone of the family. But like I said, guys, in terms of my personal ownership, driving experience, just the value and the enjoyment I get from it, it's up there. It's a nice car, and I think the fact that Mitsubishi doesn't make cars anymore, you don't really see a lot of these on the road. I have not, honestly, guys, in the year and a half or so I've had this car, I have not seen another 3000 GT on the road, not a single one. And I'm in Houston, which is obviously a huge area, a huge place, and I haven't seen a single other one on the road. So you're gonna be driving around a semi-unicorn that you can appreciate, because not everyone on the block has one, like a Mustang or a, you know, a Corvette, which is like everywhere. So yeah, those are just kind of my quick thoughts, guys, on the 3000 GT. I really like the car, but again, I really view I kind of think it's viewed as the second fiddle, the Jermaine Jackson, the Fredo Corleone of the family, where it's constantly kind of overlooked, underappreciated, undervalued. Some of the reasons I understand why, some of them not so much. But let me know what you guys think. If you guys have one, if you enjoy it, if you don't, how it compares to maybe other JDMs you have. Would love to hear your thoughts and comments. Hope you guys like the channel. Give the video a like and subscribe. See you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye bye.